Welcome to Stories of Amazing Grace. The views and opinions expressed on Stories of Amazing Grace are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Madison Church of Christ or the producer of this program. Enjoy.
Good evening. I'm Larry Souder, and welcome to Stories of Amazing Grace. We're coming to you from Bixler Chapel at the Madison Church of Christ in Madison, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us on YouTube and listening by way of radio through the facilities of World Christian Broadcasting. And for a live audience, glad that you're here as well. Well, our theme scripture always comes from Romans 8:38 through 39. I'm sure that nothing can separate us from God's love. Not life or death, not angels or spirits, not the present, not the future, and not powers above or powers below. Nothing in all creation can separate us from God's love for us in Christ Jesus our Lord. Special guest tonight, special guest is Jim Shannon. And we have an assistant. His name is William Watson, and pretty soon you'll meet his mother, Karen Shannon, and also Dr. Bill Shannon is with us. A dog doctor, correct? Dog doctor. All right, veterinarian. Well, I met Jim, I think, in 1999 when I was a videographer here at the church, and we had the old Amazing Grace Bible class, and we had Stories of Amazing Grace as a feature within the Amazing Grace Bible class. And I went to Murfreesboro, to Middle Tennessee State University, to do a little filming, a feature on Jim Shannon. I don't think he remembers me because I was just the videographer, and I think Jimmy Seitz was the host of the show at the time. But anyhow, we did a little feature on Jim, and I want to play that before we interview Jim. There will be some redundancy in what's in the video and what we hear on the interview, but I think it gave you a good overview about Jim and a little bit about his background. So let's roll that.
Let me tell you about me and my family. I'm a 27-year-old computer information systems graduate from Middle Tennessee State University. I also have cerebral palsy and am nonverbal. My family has 7 in it. The only part of my body I have total control over is my chin. I have a laptop computer mounted on my wheelchair. In that computer, there is a special program that allows me to operate it with the custom-made chin switch. When I'm not on Wi-Fi, my laptop, I click my tongue for yes and stick my tongue out for nah. I was born without CP. My parents believe it was one of the sets of shots I got when I was little, like the MMR, that gave me this blessing.
Well, actually, we don't know what caused Jim's problems. We think it might have been the DPT shots. And later, after we look back on the times that he had his DPT shots, after each one, he started digressing with his physical skills. Then by the time he was 4 and 5, he was talking, but by the time he was 6, he had lost even the ability to talk. We knew from the way he was talking and the things that he said, and he could read, he could do mathematics. By the time he was 3, he was very, very intelligent young man. He did a lot of joking and teasing everybody, and so we knew he had a great mind.
I went to Beach Senior High School. It took me 5 years to graduate from high school because of the difficult classes I was taking. I graduated 20th out of 350 and was voted most intelligent male of my class. At MTSU, I have my own apartment in family housing on campus. I absolutely love being away from home. Because I am so physically challenged, I have someone with me 24 hours a day.
And I can remember praying every night and every morning, please give my son an opportunity to be able to bring his intelligence to fruition, because he's a very intelligent young man, and let him make a difference in people's lives. And I think every aide that we've ever had has always said, I've gotten more out of this than I gave to Jim.
Oh yeah, I mean he's a testimony of God's grace. I mean, God's work right here on earth. He's a testimony to that. It's just plain and simple. I mean, he's such an inspiration. You have no, as a person who's able to do everything you want to do, you can have no excuses when you go home to be able to say, well, I can't do something because here's Jim and he can do all the things, and he's in a wheelchair.
One thing that we both have learned through the years, and everybody in our family has learned, is patience. Patience, waiting his turn for me to do something for him, or me waiting for him to finish a sentence when he's writing, waiting for him to tell us something, because that's always takes a little time. I guess patience is the biggest thing. If it hadn't been for Jim, my husband and I would never have gotten involved in the things that we are involved in now as far as working with people with disabilities. It has taken us places we never thought we'd go, and brought us to our knees many times. It has increased my faith tremendously because God has answered more prayers for us, for Jim, than we could have ever imagined.
In high school, my favorite teacher said a quote from Sir Winston Churchill. That was never, never give you the exclamation point. Since then it's become my M-O-D-D-O period. Look on the top of my TV.
He's made a difference in our lives. We're much better people because of him.
And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Shannon. Thank you. Well, we had to learn a little patience tonight in getting started with the program, but glad that you're here. Jim communicates by clicking with his chin there, a little switch that he has attached to his head, and a click is yes, and a tongue out is no. So we got a yes and a no, and other than that, we communicate with the computer. So are you prepared to type out a word for us to show what you have to go through, like the word hello or something? All right.
This I have cerebral palsy. My mouse is a tad slow.
All right, that's good. So, if we had to wait for that, we'd be here 24 hours. So, we're going to speed up the process. I have in my hand all the questions and all the answers. So, I'm going to read some questions, and he's going to key up the answers there, hopefully, and we'll be able to see those answers on the screen and be able to hear the answers. So, let's start by telling us about your family.
Dr. Bill Shannon, my dad, has been a small animal doctor in my hometown of Hendersonville since the early 1970s. He is also an elder at the Hendersonville Church of Christ. Dad spends his free time first with his family and second hunting and fishing in a camp in Arkansas. My mom, Karen, has an elementary teaching degree from David Lipscomb University. Before her 3 children were born, she taught in Alabama, while Dad was in vet school. After that, she became the best darn mother in God's universe. Her time is spent with her family, working in her garden and being involved with the Sumner County Master Gardener Society. In July of 2018 they celebrated their golden wedding anniversary. I have 2 marvelous sisters, Kelly and Mandy. Kelly is a graduate from Harding University in Arkansas. She has her doctorate in optometry and is the optometrist at the Hendersonville Walmart. In May of 2000, she was hitched to a wonderful guy named Jeremy, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. In December of 2004, they had a baby girl named Bethany. In April of 2014, Kelly and Jeremy flew all the way to China to get their 2-year-old girl, Sophie, they adopted. They started the adoption process like in 2010 and finally were approved in late 2013. In 2017, all 4 of them traveled back to China to get James Carter, a baby boy. Mandy is an education graduate from David Lipscomb University and is currently teaching elementary school. In June of 2001, she married a great guy named Clancy. He teaches chemistry and coaches basketball at Hendersonville High School. In March of 2004, they had a baby girl named Savannah. On December 31st, they had another girl named Caroline. In August of 2008, they had Weston Clark Hall. Both of my sisters, if I do say so, could be models. They are that beautiful. And both sing good enough they would win The Voice and American Idol.
And you're pretty good looking too. Have you always had cerebral palsy?
I was born May 19, 1971 without CP. My parents believe it was one of the sets of shots I received when I was little, like the DPT, that gave me this blessing. I was able to read, add and subtract by the age of 3. I was one of the first disabled students in Sumner County to be mainstreamed. I went to a normal kindergarten and was in all advanced classes during school. I bought my first computer, an Apple, in 7th grade. My family goes to the Hendersonville Church of Christ. I was baptized in September of 1983. The day I was baptized, my grandparents were on a cruise. When they came back and found out about me, my grandfather told this to me. The very minute I was baptized, he was sleeping. He had a dream that a snow white sheet covered me. Pretty spooky, huh? I went to Beach Senior High School. It took me 5 years to graduate from high school because of the difficult classes I was taking. During those 5 years, I became very involved with the basketball team, especially with the Lady Bucks. While I was at Beach, the Lady Bucks went to the state tournament 4 years. I graduated 20th out of 350 and was voted most intelligent male of my class. After high school, I went to Volunteer State Community College, right down the street from home. 4 years later, I graduated magna cum laude with an associate degree of business administration. During the 4 years at Vol State, my parents and I went to several universities known for their programs for physically challenged people. I chose Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 1 hour from home.
I understand the department heads at MTSU were a little bit cautious about you attending school there.
A few weeks before I started Middle Tennessee State University, I had a meeting with the directors of the computer science and the computer information system departments to discuss which one would be my major. I was the very first totally physically challenged nonverbal student to attend that university. My parents and I traveled to Murfreesboro to talk with the 2 directors. They had us sit in a room with a long table. We were facing the door. When the door opened, and the 2 directors first saw me, they looked at each other and telepathically thought to each other, "He won't last a week." Then my computer started speaking. After my speech with all my schooling and awards, the directors looked at each other and telepathically thought, "Now this dude is the real deal." They both said, if there was anything they can do to help me, while I was at Middle Tennessee, to let them know. In our chat, I learned that the computer information systems director went to the church I would attend, while at Middle Tennessee. I had never been away from home before. At Middle Tennessee State University, I had my own apartment in family housing on campus. I absolutely loved being away from home. Because I am so physically challenged, I had someone with me 24 hours a day. Before I came to Middle Tennessee State University, I had people go to class with me and help me do my work, and my parents took care of my other needs. It took me a few weeks to get acclimated to my new environment. After I decorated Stud Central and went to the Christian Student Center on campus, I was fine and dandy. Stud Central, my apartment, had one overwhelming theme. The nanosecond that you walk in my door, you know what it is. It is Star Trek.
I filmed this room a few weeks ago, but I'm not a Star Trek person, so I got things mixed up in there. There's some Lord of the Rings and Star Trek together, but it is his room, and he's able to control, I think, the lights and maybe the TV as well, and the blinds, so he's got complete control of everything. So forgive me for mixing things up, but just to be clear, that you are a Star Trek fan and not a Star Wars fan, right?
I am a freaking major trekker. One of my aides at Vol State got me watching The Next Generation. My apartment had 7 Trek posters, a numbered print of Worth, 3 model ships, 2 numbered plates, a calendar, a Klingon crossing sign, a Trek mouse pad and screensaver. I even put a Trek message on my answering machine. My all-time favorite Star Trek character is Worth. There is something about that crab-headed Klingon I just like. My interests include more than Trek. I love music. The only music I can't handle is that cat-banging heavy metal stuff. I have always loved watching people cook, especially desserts. If I hadn't been disabled, I always thought I'd be one bad baker. I also love cards. Every Wednesday night I was at Mizzou. Some friends from the Christian Student Center came over after church and played spades. One of my other interests is listening to audiobooks. I like to listen to fantasy and mysteries. In May of 1998, I received my bachelor's degree in computer information systems. I think I was cum laude. 2 semesters before graduation I took the graduate entrance exam for computer information system. I flew through that like grease through a goose. January of 98, I was accepted into the graduate program at Middle Tennessee State University. August of 98, I started this program. 20 months and many sleepless nights I graduated, thank you Lord, with a master's in computer information.
And what type of employment did you find after you graduated?
About soon after I received my master's degree, I began designing websites. In December of 2000, I was hired by Tennessee Care as their website maintainer. I now work from home doing patient admission evaluations. It is the perfect job for me. In 2004, my parents added a very nice bedroom, office, entertainment room to their house for me. This new room is extremely beautiful. I would have never dreamed that I would ever have a room as nice as this. This room has 2 themes. First is Star Trek. I imported everything from my Mizzou apartment minus the models which kind of broke en route home. I have added a few more Trek goodies since graduation. I even have a one-of-a-kind custom-made rug. It is a huge picture of the Enterprise. The second theme of Stud Central Part 2 is Gandalf, the wizard from Lord of the Rings. I have 2 limited edition paintings. One is autographed by the wizard himself. I also have several limited edition statues. They are now in a beautiful black case built by my crafty brother-in-law, Clancy Hall. It even has lights. 3 other interests of mine include the Nashville Symphony, video games and role-playing. I have had season tickets to the Nashville Symphony since 2016 and have loved almost every show. I currently have a PS4. I have people come play and watch. My favorite series is Uncharted. I like action and role-playing games. I also play computer games. In the early 90s, a few friends from church introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons. Once or twice a month we would gather at my dining room table and adventure to different worlds. This happened for a few years. My friends moved, and the game stopped. In 2015 I was reunited with a high school classmate, because his wife went to my church. Long story short, he and his family and another friend from church started a monthly game of Dungeons and Dragons. He also comes over and plays video games. In late 2017 I was able to start an online Dungeons and Dragons game. In 2015 I was asked to be a writer for
And he was a writer for a local magazine called the Indian Lake Peninsula, and he says he likes that very much. I also discovered that he is featured in one of the chapters in this book called The Courage to Care. How did this come about, Jim?
While I was at Volunteer State Community College, I had a helper that was a published author. Before she started helping me, she was working on an idea for a book. Her idea was to do a book on several families with a physically or mentally challenged person in each family and how that person affects that family. She had 6 families before she started working with me. She talked with my family and me about the book and asked us if we'd be interested in being in it. We said yes. After a few months of writing and rewriting her book, the book went through the press. I even saw it being made in the press. It was really interesting seeing something I wrote being put on paper for people to read for hundreds of years.
And explain how you were able to use your computer and talk to us.
The only part of my body I have total control over is my chin. I have a computer with a special program that allows me to operate it with a custom-made chin switch. The software is called Easy Keys and I was one of the people chosen to work the bugs out. Stephen Hawking, the physicist, used this software. When I'm not on my computer, I click my tongue for yes and stick my tongue out for no. A few years after I graduated from SOAG, I started speaking to local universities about my experience with assistive technology. In 2014, I joined an assistive technology email group. Since then I have been involved into doctoral studies. I also have been able to talk with a class at Temple University and a class in Israel using Skype.
And how is your health today?
For the first 43 years of my life I can count the number of days I was in the hospital on one hand. Soon after Thanksgiving 2013, I became really sick with extreme stomach pain. The lady in The Exorcist had nothing on me, if you get my drift. Long story short, my guts were twisted like a balloon animal. The next few weeks were the worst of my life. I had tubes going in my body and was trapped in a hospital room. One good thing that happened was I had one of the big rooms in the hospital, because I knew the head nurse. I had surgery the day after I was admitted to the hospital. The doctor said if I had not had the surgery that day I would be 6 feet under. During my hospital visit I lost almost 20 pounds, which is 25% of my total weight. I am totally healed by the grace of God.
And your guts were twisted like a balloon animal, is that what you were saying? Well, are you still interested in Star Trek?
2016 was a big year for Star Trek fans, because it was the 50th anniversary of the original Star Trek series. All over America there were conventions celebrating this occasion. Chicago was the nearest convention to me. I was blessed to take 2 friends and Dad to it. I had a blast. I saw some Star Trek stars. I had my picture taken with my favorite Star Trek person Michael Dorn, who played Worf. He autographed the picture for free, which was awesome. I also won an autographed picture of Patrick Stewart and William Shatner at an auction.
And looking back on your life, how has God used your disability? And what is your relationship with Him today?
In May of 2010, I said this in church at the invitation. Most people come up here for prayers for some problem they have in their life. Today I came up here to thank the big man upstairs for all the many blessings he has poured over me. I do not believe in luck or coincidence. I believe in blessings. Luck did not place me in this time of technology. He placed me here. If I had been born any other time, I probably would be in a nursing home. Luck did not place me in Hendersonville, Tennessee. He did. Luck did not give me such a wonderful family. He did. Luck did not give me such a wonderful church. He did. Luck did not give me this brain. He did. Most of all, luck did not give me such a totally awesome savior. He did. For over 3 decades I have had several hundred personal attendants. I can count the bad ones on one hand and have fingers left over. Was that luck? No. I have only been in the hospital 3 times, that includes my birth. Luck? I rarely get sick. If you knew my diet, you'd say that ain't luck. I live in a room bigger than some of my friends' houses. I was able to get a master's degree. I work from home. I could go on, but I know y'all want to eat. I just wanted to share this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Shannon. We're not done yet, so have a seat. And Mom, we're going to have Mom come on up and stand behind Mom and Dad. It'll be fun. We're going to play a little video here that shows how inspiring Jim's life has been to others.
Jim Shannon. Do you like it, Jim?
Why is Jim so happy? He seems so happy, but he's got this disability, and I don't know if I would be that happy. Why is he so happy?
I could not honestly tell you. He's always been happy from the day he was born. He's always been he was a happy child. He has always teased and laughed and carried on. I remember one time I had him on the side of the bed and he almost fell off. Grabbed him and I said, "Oh, Jim, you almost fell off and broke your legs." And he said, "Well, it wouldn't matter."
Can't walk anyway.
And he could talk for a good while until he was about 7 or 8. Then he really, he could say phrases real quickly, but after that, he was walking in one of those little things that runs around. I have pictures and I was looking at pictures the other day of him walking around in the little thing and getting in the cabinet and putting stuff over his head, putting bowls on his head. He stood up in his bed one time, and that was the only time. So we just really feel like it was after the DPT shots. Each one he would progressively get a little worse.
He has a never quit attitude. Did he get that from you?
Oh, I don't think so. What? I don't think so. He's just always had that happiness and patience, and if I can't do it this way, we'll work out another way. Always in school, the teachers have always said, we can't believe he has accomplished what he's accomplished. I have to tell you, the first time he did a spelling test, this was back in the early 70s, before computers like this and printouts like they are now. And so we had a little, like a ticker tape piece of paper that came out of the computer when he would spell it out. And so I took each one, I'd give him the word, I took each one and glued it to the paper and put the list of 20 words that he did, sent it back in his notebook. And by the time he got to school the next day, all the glue had melted all of the printing, and it was just totally blank. So you learn from doing.
Was he teased in school or accepted by the students?
Oh, accepted.
Yeah.
Right, Jim? Oh, he had the best friends.
I want to read an excerpt from this book, and it was written by his father, and kind of touching. He addressed a Wednesday night class, a men's class at church. This is several years ago, and they were studying about struggles in people's lives, and Bill spoke about his struggle, and here's an excerpt from that. He says, "Yes, it's been a struggle. Have you ever had your heart ripped out and just thrown on the floor? Well, 17 years ago I did, and my wife did. And it's been 17 years putting it back in. We pioneered nearly everything that worked. You can't just go somewhere and have it all programmed out for you. There in the first years, what I call the shock years, that was the worst time to struggle. I really quit living for a while. I didn't care if I lived or died. It took about a year or so for the inner me to come out of that depression. During that time, Bill says, Satan came into his life. I didn't care if I lived or died. I went through the motions of being a good guy, but was not. I tried to drown my sorrow with liquor. I took the Lord's name in vain. I did many things I'm ashamed of. I tell you this because I think it is vital for you to know the agony I went through. After getting past the shock years, I finally got self out of it and feeling sorry for self and put the real focus on my son where it belonged." So you have had quite a struggle in your life. What did you think? I know you loved Jim when he was born and love him now, but what went through your head when you knew of his disability? What emotions did you have?
I think the worst emotions were, well, when I found out Bill was not with me, my mother was with me, and we were at Vanderbilt, and the neurologist that said he had cerebral palsy was just so matter of fact and said, I just think the best thing for you all to do is put him in a home because he's never gonna be able to do anything.
Little did they know.
I said, you just wait. And that was right then was when I was determined, yeah, he was, because I knew how smart he was already. That was probably when he was about 12 to 16 months old. I'm not quite sure, maybe 16 months old at that point in time. And he was already talking by then. And by the time he was 3, I would play 21 with him, and he could beat me. He could count those numbers up. I was a school teacher, so I would sing to him the alphabet in sounds like Abba, Kada, and he would learn the sounds, and he learned to read on his own. Knowing that intelligence was there, how did I feel? Just determined that he was going to make it. And wow, did I start praying to God, because I knew how smart he was. And he was a lot of first in Sumner County. I mean, God answered those prayers. He was the only child and one of the only children that went through Sumner County with an aide with him from kindergarten through 12th grade. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he did get the positivity from me, I don't know, because I just knew he could do whatever he wanted to do. and
And
pushed
William,
him.
you're an aide, or you've assisted Jim several times.
Yes, sir. I've been doing it since about, I think, August, right? And I mean, it's just been a pleasure and a privilege to work with him. I mean, he really is an inspiration. I mean, just seeing what he can accomplish with, what he has to deal with, kind of made me throw out all the doubts I had about myself first going into college and stuff like that. So it really is an honor.
Also in the book is and the schedule may be different now, but I think this is during the high school years, a typical day. This is written by Jim's father. Karen and Jim up at 6:30. She bathes, toilets him, feeds him. That takes 1 hour. I take him to school. This is Bill. I go to work. Karen does all the work at home for a family of 5, cooks, cleans, shops. She picks him up early at school. Then he comes home for a 2-hour rest. From 3:30 to 6:30, she studies with him and prepares supper. We eat supper. It takes 45 minutes to eat. I do the dishes and help the girls with their homework. Karen finishes up homework by 8 p.m. He goes to bed at 8:30. We spend time with the girls until 9:30 or so, until they go to bed. Then I get to relax, read, watch TV until 11:30. All night, Jim has to be turned every 2 hours. Karen turns him half the time. I turn him half the time. You know what is better than money? To sleep the whole night through. In summary, he says, it has been a struggle. And the reason Jim and I have made it this far is because of the church. And who is the church? It's you. Every one of you. Schedule about the same?
Well, we don't have homework anymore. That's nice. Actually, Jim has aides from 8 in the morning till 10 at night.
Wow.
And there's some days, well, last week, he sent his aide up, she said, Jim wants to know if you're all right. He hadn't seen you in 2 days.
Yeah. Wow.
But we do still turn him at night. We have at least 2 nights a week. We have it covered, and then we cover the other nights, but sometimes 3 nights a week. And we have some wonderful aides that will do respite care and stay 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
We try not to be gone any longer than 4 or 5 days.
Jim gave me permission to read something out of this book. This is getting ready for the prom in high school. And I think the girl you took to the prom is here tonight. Leslie? Is there a Leslie here? Wave, stand, make a noise. There's, okay. Maybe this will embarrass you as much as Jim, I don't know. Well, it says in the book here, a few days before the prom, I went to a tux renting place. My favorite color, other than the color of money, is blue. I got a black tux with a blue tie and cummerbund. I got dressed. When I looked in the mirror, I said to myself, darn, I'm handsome. Look out, Ted Cruz, here comes James Stanton Shannon. Then it says, I had been waiting on Leslie about 10 minutes when I saw a vision of loveliness walking up the stairs. It was Leslie. I thought, holy moly. I've never seen any female more beautiful than Leslie was that moment. She was wearing a pink off-the-shoulder hooped dress and a single strand of pearls on her perfectly tanned neck. That night will be a night I'll never, 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 never forget. Wow. Let's see if we have some questions or comments from people who know Jim. Raise your hand or make a little noise.
Well, I'll say something. I don't know you, Jim, but I'm glad that I met you. I have to commend you. You are the happiest person I've ever seen in my life. And I freak out when my bills are not paid. And, Mom, I have to commend you. You are doing a wonderful job. Y'all are just wonderful. But I do have a question. Do you be able to eat regular food? You like pizza?
What is the answer to that, Mom?
He likes a lot of sweets. You can tell I cook a lot. He likes a lot of sweets, but yeah. His meats have to be ground like a steak or a pork chop or something. Hamburger, but he eats regular food, yes.
Can he chew food?
Yeah. He has sometimes a little trouble swallowing or keeping the food in his mouth, but he has basically 4 meals, small meals a day.
What's his favorite dish or treat?
Cake, pie, ice cream, shakes. That's why I said if you knew my diet, you'd know.
Okay.
Cookies, no vegetables. No
vegetable.
nothing green, only potatoes, all kinds of potatoes.
No vegetables.
No vegetables.
Jim, would you share with us why you call your condition a blessing?
What he said in his summary about things not being luck
Yeah.
probably reinforces that it's a blessing. Do you consider it a blessing?
Well, yes, because of where it's led us, and the places we've gone, the people we've met, the people we've helped, people we've encouraged. For me, I was involved with the Disability Council for the state of Tennessee, chairwoman for like 3 years. Worked with Technology Access Center, of which I know nothing about technology, nothing. He will agree. But we helped raise money for those efforts. It's been a blessing for Bill and I because of what we've learned about life and how to trust and how to have faith. It's really a trusting situation. When you trust other people with your son, that's a real issue. Mm-hmm. But Jim's pretty good at deciding who he wants to take care of him. And he gets, like William, I said, where did he come from? And Jim said, well, I put on the internet I needed somebody. And William answered the call. And William came to me afterwards and said, Miss Shannon, if I don't get this job, that's okay. Jim and I are going to play video games. I'm going to come back. We're going to play video games. And then we had Dita over here. Dita, raise your hand. Dita came out of nowhere. And Dita was his aide for a couple of years. And she was such a blessing to us. And I think we kind of were a blessing to her several times.
Shayna, you had a comment or a question?
I got to ask permission something real quick.
Okay. This is personal, isn't it? This is personal.
No, I first met Jim when I was in high school, and Jim and I were campers together, and I would go visit the camp at the Hendersonville Church of Christ where I later worked. And I met Bill the very first day taking care of Jim, and I didn't know. You know, as somebody who's walking in and everybody else knows Jim, and I'm watching them interact with Jim, and didn't take long to figure out how smart Jim really was. And Jim and I could tell each other a lot. We could tell you guys a lot of embarrassing stories on each other. He's watched me do some stupid things, and I have listened to a lot of crushes and everything else. But one of the neatest things that Jim would never tell you, I actually lived with them for a little while in my early 20s for a few months. And Jim used to sit with me in church. And things you don't consider. And they started passing the communion, and he's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to give Jim communion here. And then it was over, and he kept clicking at me. I'm like, what do you need? So with Jim, if you don't have the computer, which he doesn't have it in church, I started spelling. Or you know, A through L, nothing. M through Z, he would click. So we would spell through, and he started telling me he wanted something out of his bag. You sure I'm good? Okay. So long story short, he wanted me to get his checkbook out because he had not written his contribution check for the week. And it kind of became our routine every week. I don't know if you just didn't like your mom's handwriting and wanted me to do it or what, but it was our weekly routine. You talk about being humbled. And those of us who sit in our pews and say, we're tight this week, We don't have anything to give. And I'm sitting with Jim Shannon every Sunday, who will not miss and make sure I write his check every week. Jim, there are a lot of Sundays I sit in church and I think, it's tight this week, and I think of you. And you've taught me a big lesson in that way.
Wow.
My family and I recently started visiting Hendersonville, and Jim was the first person I met from Hendersonville, and we started corresponding and talking through email, and I felt such a connection to Jim. I was wondering, has Jim always been outgoing like that? Because I told my wife, I was like, what if nobody talks to us or we don't know anybody besides, we knew the preacher who had just come, and she said, well, I bet somebody will, and Jim was that person. So I just wondered if he's always been, since he was a little boy, that way.
I'll let Aunt Melissa answer that. Aunt Melissa, would you answer that question?
Yes, he has always been outgoing. I call him Bubba. He loves to tease me. So, she was talking about how he loves to tease. Yeah, he loves to, he's all about smiles and happy and just having a good time. He is one of the happiest people I know. So, anyway, just love him to death.
Jim, aren't you involved with evangelism over the internet?
Jim does the World Bible School studies with individuals, and he has several students, usually around, 10 to 20 students at a time. And he also, one thing he has done that is kind of neat, when his aides work with him on Wednesday nights, he said, well, they have to take me to church and they have to hear what's going on. Even if they don't want to, they're going to hear. And so he has had 2 different aides that have been baptized because they've had to come to church with Jim.
Great. Take one more here.
I hesitate to do this. I don't want to talk about me, but when Jim and I have worked together doing some IT stuff, websites and things like that, I always enjoyed working with him because of his creative mind and also teaching me patience. In addition, he has also, his cheerfulness has brought me back from some minor depression at time to time too. So anybody who's having a little bit of self-doubt or something, get to know the man, and you'll see the other side. So.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Bill, for being here tonight. Thank you so much. Well, let me tell you about next month. Remember this newspaper headline, Tragedy for Our City. This is September 25th, 2017. Our guests will be Joey Spann and Caleb Engel. They were having church that morning when a shooter came in and did a mass shooting on Stories of Amazing Grace. Thank you for being with us tonight. Have a safe trip home.